traveling fast and pushes against the front, making it rise up. This creates the first destructive characteristic of mega tsunami when they hit the shore. They rear up to become a wall of water. The long wavelength also creates a second frightening characteristic. Instead of breaking on the shore, the whole length of the wave sweeps onto land, engulfing everything before it.
With storm waves, the wavelength is just a few tens of meters, but with mega tsunami, it's hundreds of kilometers. And what this means is that when storm waves break onto a coastline, they break almost immediately. But mega tsunami just keep on coming through the whole length of the wave, and this makes them incredibly powerful and incredibly destructive.
Once scientists understood that landslides into water could produce mega tsunami, they began wondering where the next massive landslide would occur. They looked for where the biggest landslides had happened in the past, in the belief it could tell them where they might happen in the future. Geologists knew that one type of location was particularly vulnerable to landslides: large volcanic islands. There are dozens of such islands scattered throughout the world's oceans, and the reason they are prone to landslides is because of the way they are built. These islands began life millions of years ago, when lava erupted onto the ocean floor. As this cooled and hardened, layer built upon layer until it formed a land platform of volcanic rubble above sea level. Scientists realized that every few thousand years, one of these piles of volcanic rubble had fallen into the sea.
Volcanic islands grow by one lava flow after another over tremendous amounts of time. As they do this, they become oversteepened. At the same time, you have the ocean eroding away at the base, and eventually all these things together end up weakening the edifice to the point where it collapses.
This is Hawaii, the largest chain of volcanic islands on Earth. These scarred valleys are where vast sections of Hawaiian coastline fell into the sea hundreds of thousands of years ago. The mega tsunami they created would have been thousands of times more powerful than Lituya Bay. Underwater lies the debris of ancient Hawaiian collapses. Whole chunks of the islands have fallen onto the sea floor. The biggest section is the Tuscaloosa Seamount, a giant block which fell off the island of Oahu 2 million years ago. This single rock is almost 10 times the volume of Mount Everest. When it hit the water, it would have created an unimaginable mega tsunami. It would have taken 5 hours to travel across the Pacific and strike the west coast of America. But this event was not unique.
Well, what we've noticed when we start looking at the volcanic islands is that every archipelago has collapses. The evidence is insurmountable. Everywhere you go, you find evidence for debris avalanches, slumps.
The Cape Verde Islands in the Atlantic also had a massive landslide. This was 80,000 years ago. The mega tsunami this created would have taken just 1 hour to strike the west coast of Africa. These volcanic island collapses seemed to be rare, only happening every several thousand years. The most recent one is thought to have occurred in the Indian Ocean, when part of the island of Réunion collapsed, just 4,000 years ago. 7 hours later, the wave it generated would have struck Australia. Although this is believed to be the last volcanic island to collapse, it seems inevitable that somewhere it will happen again.
You can't build islands over thousands of years, flow after flow, without having collapse. It's part of their nature, it's part of their history, and it's part of their future.
The big question is where and when the next large volcanic island collapse will occur. Because these landslides all happened in the ancient past, no one has ever witnessed one. They are so rare, scientists cannot be sure what the precursors will be. But of all the large volcanic islands around the world, one in particular shows disturbing signs of instability. If this island collapses, it would create a mega tsunami that would race across the Atlantic and hit the east coast of the United States. Every city on the shoreline would be destroyed. From New York in the north to Miami in the south, the wave would wreak havoc for as much as 20 kilometers inland. The origin of this wave would be thousands of miles away. This mega tsunami would come from a volcanic island off the coast of North Africa, from one of the Canary Islands. It would come from the island of La Palma. La Palma is one of the westernmost islands in the Canaries. 80,000 people live here, making their living from farming and tourism. There are also 2 volcanoes on the island, one extinct, one active. In the early 1990s, a British geologist travelled to the island to study the active volcano, called the Cumbre Vieja.
I came here to work on the Cumbre Vieja volcano with the aim of understanding the history of the volcano and the volcanic hazards that it produced.
Simon Day was to discover evidence that the next volcanic island collapse is likely to occur here. La Palma consists entirely of 2 volcanoes. The extinct volcano makes up the northern part, but the southern half of the island is the active volcano, the Cumbre Vieja. This is shaped like a ridge rather than a cone, and for thousands of years, volcanic vents have regularly erupted all along the summit of this ridge. In 1949, it suddenly erupted again, and this eruption was to change everything. Although the eruption itself posed little danger to islanders, shortly after it started, an unusual event occurred.
About a week after the start of the 1949 eruption, something extraordinary happened. There was a series of very strong earthquakes, and the west side of the volcano slid downwards and towards the sea by about 4 metres. And for about 2 kilometres along the summit of the volcano, this fissure opened up. It's not an ordinary volcanic vent that just opens horizontally and that magma then erupts out as lava. This side has gone down relative to this side by about 4 metres as this area moved off towards the sea. And this was something quite unusual, quite unique, that you don't normally see on volcanoes.
A section of La Palma had started to slide and then abruptly stopped. Simon Day couldn't be sure what was happening to the volcano and whether it would slide again or even collapse into the sea.